Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the SoundMoney Podcast.
The SoundMoney, Sound Principles Podcast. My name is Josh Anderson, here with Zach Davis. How are you, Zach?
I'm good. Hey, everybody. Glad to be on today.
Man, it is, looks like both of us are still cold, right? We're both wearing sweaters today. It's a little cold out here in Idaho. We just got home from Mexico, so we're not used to the cold weather again.
Yeah. And nobody brought me a pina colada this morning.
That's a bad deal.
And I know. And I couldn't find a buffet anywhere at the house this morning.
You know, we got to get better senoritas.
Yeah, my wife asked me where her mojito was. So
dang.
She's probably thinking she's got to get a better one of me too.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how it goes in the world. But because of that, we're getting used to the cold again. We're cold. We're bundled up. So, but today, actually, Zach, today. I'm really excited about today. There's been a lot of discussion going on in the world around this topic the last 2 weeks. You can't turn on a news organization or read a financial report that isn't centered around this topic that we're going to talk about today. And I think it's going to be fun for our listeners to understand a little more about it. You and I have been aware, we've dealt with this for 25 years of business. And so for us, this is something that just a lot of people need to have a baseline education on and understanding to be able to understand the world we're living in today. And what we're going to talk about today is this new buzzword that's going around the business world called tariffs. Namely, right, tariffs in the U.S. economy. A boost? Is it a boost for the growth? Right? What are the opportunities? What are the downfalls? But what are the opportunities for businesses and business owners and people to understand how they work? And so, I know for me, Zach, I'm a little bit excited about talking about today how they can positively impact an economy and how they can supercharge an economy and how that's maybe been done in the past. I'd imagine you've been getting bombarded in all of our businesses. You've probably been getting bombarded with this question about tariffs a bunch lately as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, everybody's thinking about it, right? Well, everybody who pays taxes is thinking about it because either on the side of, yay, Trump said we're getting rid of income tax, we're going to go to all tariffs, or the other side of people going, oh, this is going to make inflation worse and we're going to pay more for everything. Right? It's like both sides.
And I don't have a single day right now that doesn't go by that, you and I do business. We do a lot of business in the European Union. We do a lot of business in Mexico. We have so many businesses in Mexico.
Yeah. And we order products out of China.
Yeah. We order lots of products out of China, and we do a lot of business with our neighbors to the north in Canada. So the three countries that have been all over the news about tariffs, Mexico, China, and Europe, right, are in the game. And so we deal with this every day. So we don't have, we have vendors that are in panic. We have distributors that are in panic. We have customers that are in panic for all of our different businesses around the world. And so we want to take the time today to explain how they work, what they are. So maybe we'll start out right there, Zach. What is a tariff? Like, what is a tariff? And then I want to get into for a second, how do tariffs, how do they shield American manufacturers? That's this next part. But what is a tariff, first of all?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Most people don't understand how a tariff works, and it's really not that complicated. But a tariff is basically a tax. I mean, if you think about the United States of America, when you make money, the government says, if you make money, you have to pay this tariff, right, to live in your house. So you could just interchange the word. So if you have a piece of property and you're paying property tax, the government is saying, if you're going to own property, that's a funny word.
Yeah.
Own. If you're going to own property in America, you don't really own it, right? Because stop paying your property tax and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to charge you this tariff. So, right? For you to own this, you're going to have to pay this much money every year. So the way we do business with lots of countries around the world is depending on what you produce as a country and what you consume as a country, you make deals with all these other countries on what products can come in and what products can go out. And when those deals are made, there's usually always some financial incentive somewhere, and the tariff is basically the tax. So it'll be saying, okay, Canada, if you're going to sell lumber into America, then you're going to have to pay this X amount of tariff, right, on products going out the other way. So it really is just a tax on another company for them to do business with us. If you look at the countries as business people, it's like charging your vendors, right? If we're going to let you sell this product to our customers, then we're going to make it more expensive for them to buy your product, because we also produce a product and we want them to buy American lumber, not Canadian lumber. So we're going to put a tax or a tariff on Canadian lumber, so that when the American people buy lumber out of Canada, they're going to have to pay more, right? That's a tariff.
And it's the primary goal is that, right? The primary goal is economic growth inside of your own borders, inside your own country. That's why tariffs exist, right? So that a good or service, if it's produced somewhere else around the world at a significant labor difference in price or resource difference, that it can be a level playing field inside of our own country. Now, this is really important to me, Zach. You know me, I love history. So got to go back in time to the War of 1812, right? War of 1812. We're in a war with Great Britain. And if you remember them suckers, they burned down our White House, little freakers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm still pissed about it. I keep it right here, so you know.
You got the coin right there?
I keep a coin right here of it to remember myself, because I get mad about it. But they burned down our White House. It's in my other room.
You know what makes, our White House. You know what makes me more upset about the whole thing? Before they burned it down, they ate the food that was prepared for the president at the table.
Yeah.
They eat the food and then burn the White House.
Yeah, it's wrong.
That's insult to injury.
Insult. But anyway, so they burned down our White House. We have the War of 1812. We finally get them out of there. And in 1816, we decide that we are going broke as a country. We are in a bad way. Like after the War of 1812, most people don't realize we were on the verge of bankruptcy and losing our union. Like, we had won the Revolutionary War. We had now won the War of 1812. It was like the repeat. And we are in the verge of collapse. And at that time, we had the tariff of 1816. That tariff was the first time that America levied a tariff, and we leveled it against almost every product that the British Empire produced. And we said, flat across the board, we're going to have this tariff on everything you bring in. Well, what it did is it brought every job back home to America. It brought industry. We before that time, we actually struggled as a country with industry, meaning we weren't producing our own steel. We weren't producing very many of our own goods, mostly forestry things, right? We weren't producing. But that alone saved the U.S. economy. It made it actually so that we had no tax in our country, zero tax in our country. We didn't tax our citizens because we were receiving such a tariff from Great Britain on products they brought into the country, and it leveled the playing field to the point that we started an industrial revolution in America. And so for me, right, that's a big deal. It was interesting to me, Zach, this past week that Jameson Greer, the president's nominee, the current nominee for U.S. trade negotiator, like the guy out here dealing with this issue, he said that protective measures, so this is a protective measure, right? He said including heavy tariffs on imports can boost American manufacturing and reduce trade deficits, leading to high-paying jobs here at home. He said that in the AP News this last week. That's the goal of a tariff, right? The reason we would tariff China, Canada, or Mexico today is we want to drive businesses back to America with high-paying, good jobs. And we control that through that tariff process. And so we already have seen, you've probably seen a lot of companies, right? They're like, whoa. We want to move manufacturing back into America. The steel industry saw it this week. The automobile manufacturing industry saw it this week. They actually, the largest automobile plant in the world is being built by Ford in Mexico, just across the border. They're not going to complete it.
Yeah, they just abandoned the project.
And where'd they take the jobs to, Zach?
Yeah, they're coming to America.
Coming back home, right? And these are jobs that they say in America will pay $38 an hour. Line work, $38 an hour, okay? Big deal, okay? So that's part of what does it. Zach, how does this encourage domestic, we're talking about a little bit domestic investment and innovation. Like, talk about innovation for a minute and how tariffs actually can drive domestic innovation.
Yeah, well, out of necessity comes all of these innovations, right? You look at what's going on right now with AI and autonomous vehicles and robotics, and like that's kind of the big buzzword right now in the industry. But every country is trying to do this, right? Well, if you have a country, say the United States of America, that doesn't produce much, right, and buy most of our goods and services from somewhere else, well, that country has the incentive to develop their technology because they need to produce a product as cheap as they possibly can and as efficiently as they possibly can to sell it to our country to be able to make the money, right? Well, when you impose a tariff and that stops, and now all of a sudden that country goes, hey, we can't sell that product in there because the country that's receiving the product, that people won't pay that much anymore. Well, what happens is you wake up the business minds of people in country that were receiving those products, because people start going, hey, if we're going to have to buy this technology or this widget or this thing from, let's say, China, right? China's the only one that produces this. But we have the resources here in the United States to produce that thing. But there's nobody in the United States that's working on that project because there's no financial incentive. I'll give you a prime example. So right now, in one of our businesses, we purchase a product from China. And the reason we purchase it from China is because instead of it costing dollars, it costs cents, right, for that product. So there's no incentive for me as American business owner to go, well, I'm gonna buy from an American business this product because I can't run the business on that margin. I have to purchase out of country. Well, if tomorrow there was a tariff placed on that product, well, guess what will happen? The company that's producing that widget currently in the United States of America is going to start selling a lot more products, but that is going to create competition. So a guy like you, Josh, might go, hey, there's really good margin in that product now. So I'm going to get in that game. I'm going to start a manufacturing facility to do this, or I'm going to start a sales team to do this, or I'm going to go invest heavily in this technology. So you're going to start seeing a lot of the money that's been going overseas into technology and these big venture capital companies. A lot of that money is going to start staying home because there's going to be entrepreneurs who are going to say, there is now a financial incentive for me to deploy my brain power and my time and my capital to build this company, because there's a market for it now in America, because there wasn't before. So that's how it builds. That's how it can create domestic prosperity, is when you don't buy products from other countries, it forces innovation inside of your own country for people to start getting smart. Because, by the way, I'm not going to be okay with paying a super high price for the product inside the United States. So guess what they're going to have to do? They're going to have to create efficiencies in their business model. They're going to have to innovate. They're going to have to get better, because they're going to have to bring their price point down to where I go, it's worth it for me to buy that product now, because I have a decision to make. Either I buy the product from China, I pay the tariff and it's too much, or I buy the product from the US guy and it's way too much for my business model, so I shut my business down. But that isn't what's going to happen. What's going to happen is innovation is going to kick in. They're going to start selling more product, prices are going to come down, and you're going to have a lot more jobs created in the United States. So it's tariffs make you invest in your own country, and you go back to a country that produces things rather than just consumes things.
And we've been on a trajectory for the last 70 years as a consumer of goods, not a producer of goods. Mm-hmm. And that's mostly because we've farmed out, through unbalanced trade deficits, all of our manufacturing out of our country, right? And we've allowed China and other third world countries to produce goods and services at such a discount. We go, oh, we just want to consume. Well, it's ruined our economy. It's ruined our people. And I always say this, Jack, supply and demand is the great equalizer of business. And it's the great supply and demand is the great ingenuity factor in the world. It is the driver of ingenuity. So your example there, you won't overpay for a TV, right? You've been paying now cheap prices for a TV. And if it costs more coming out of China with a tariff, some American company will have to have enough ingenuity to produce it in such a way that it's viable for them to do that, right?
Yep.
And and greatness happens in that process. That's when innovation happens. And so oftentimes it is. Now, there's been some examples, Zach, tariffs wrongly administered create inflation. That's, and in the short term, they often create more inflation because the US market or any market hasn't caught up to in manufacturing once you place tariffs on these things quickly enough. And so all products and services that you're buying like that have a new 18-25% tax, right? Tariff. So tariffs can produce short-term and inflation. We saw that in the Great Depression, right? In the Great Depression, we tried to use tariffs to get ourselves out of the Great Depression with the Smoot-Haley tariffs of 1930. It backfired on us.
Yeah,
right?
it didn't work.
We all of a sudden we couldn't catch up fast enough. Our labor force wasn't working. Now, the idea was perfect, right? Our labor force wasn't working. We needed more jobs. You place tariffs on things, but the industries didn't rebound quickly enough. Meaning, the steel industry didn't pick up quick enough. There wasn't enough work. The farming and agriculture industry didn't grow fast enough. So it had a spiraling effect in the beginning, and it created a little bit of hyperinflation. And some people believe actually stretched the Great Depression out by 18 months. So in the short term here, right, we're talking about we could see big tariffs in 30 days on China, Canada, Mexico, 100% tariffs on BRICS nations, right? Get your butt back to the US dollar or else. That could create inflation. What do you think about that, and how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, it's, this is the one thing that I hope people understand is that none of what the current administration is trying to do is going to be a quick fix.
No.
It is, if you go to the doctor and you say you're riding your bicycle as a kid, right? And almost all of us have crashed a bicycle. You crash a bicycle on the road and you scrape up your knee. You go to the doctor, and what's he going to do? Dig out all the gravel. So he hurts you before you start feeling a little bit better. And with some of these tariffs and things that are going to happen, there are going to be some pain points that we're going to see as the United States of America before we feel the release of that pain. And it's just part of the growing. Like you mentioned one of them, the steel industry. Like if we put big tariffs on Mexico, and we get a lot of steel out of Mexico, right? A lot of our semis, backhoes, loaders, tractors, John Deere, Case, a lot of these guys build in Mexico. Well, if there's tariffs all of a sudden on these products and people won't pay the price for those tariffs, it takes time for a John Deere to stand up a manufacturing facility or to catch up, right? And you have all these supply and demand issues. Where are they going to get their components and their parts? Are there tariffs on that? If we're making 90% of our chips for computing power are made in China, and we put a tariff on chips in China, well, how long is it going to take for us to stand up a plant to produce chips in China or to produce chips in America to put in a John Deere tractor, right? So you might be able to build a tractor and have it sitting on the lot, but if you don't have the chip to put in it to run it, and that had a tariff on it, so there's going to be this like cyclical thing that's going to happen where you're going to see, probably, in my opinion, you're going to see a little bit of inflation through this process, unless at the same time you see enough spending cut and jobs lost, because those are the two things that really fight inflation. And right? if interest rates stay up, and if there's enough jobs that are lost in the marketplace during that time, it will temper inflation. But that's a pain point too for whoever lost their job, right? So there's going to be some pain.
The one caveat there is that can offset that is energy. Energy is always the great equalizer in that, right? That if energy costs come down through production, that can offset it and balance it, and we don't see inflation with tariffs. But those are ifs today, and we believe that'll happen. And this is interesting to me too, Zach, that yes, inflation very much could go up in the short term, but we
long
learned
term, it should be much better.
Oh, much better. But there's something I think I learned during coming out of COVID that I thought was remarkable. Where we live in Southeast Idaho, and coming out of COVID, if you remember, because of COVID, you could not get computer chips, right? Circuit boards, computer chips for things like cars, trucks, recreational vehicles, all of those were
Electrical panels for housing.
housing, big electrical panels, semiconductors. All those were coming out of China and coming out of COVID, right? You just couldn't get them. And so the entire world came to a grinding halt that needed semiconductors and computer chips. But coming out of that, American ingenuity said, this is really bad, right? We are not producing enough semiconductors and computer chips in our own country. And companies like Micron came in and hired 10,000 new employees and built new facilities in Idaho to build semiconductors domestically. I believe that is the greatest thing that came out of COVID. The only good thing was that, because how much security do we now have because we're producing domestically our own semiconductors and our own computer chips for things like defense contracting, the F-35 and the F-22 and submarines and radar. And we should never allow someone that hates us or greatly dislikes us, any nation should, produce those items.
No.
I think the same thing's going to happen with these tariffs, Zach. The greatest thing that's going to come out of it is national security, because we're going to build things domestically that we should have never farmed out. And these are really high-paying jobs in tech that we should never turn over to our adversaries. And, that's why I've never been a proponent of open trade. I've never been, I thought NAFTA was the dumbest thing we ever did when I was a young business guy. I thought, this is really stupid to me. Like, I don't understand this. We are a great nation who has great resources. We should use those resources for leverage, power, and security, right? We should be a net exporter every day of everything, not a net importer. And so I think, these tariffs and this opportunity for tariffs is greatly going to increase our national security long-term. In the short term, there are going to be some bumps because of it.
Yeah.
But long-term, people like Micron are going to do what they just did in Idaho in the last 3 years and bring the semiconductor business back home, which is really positive in my book.
Yeah, and long term, it's going to produce a lot more jobs, and these jobs that it's producing are going to be meaningful jobs, right? They're going to you can have a job and get paid and not be a producer, and there's a lot of those jobs out there right now. And what this is going to do is going to bring a lot of productive jobs back to the marketplace, where the money is going to things that actually are producing something. So you complete this cycle, right? The money doesn't go and die. So long term, I think the tariffs can be a positive.
Zach,
we can stay out of a trade war.
Yeah. And I'll say this right now too, right? Like, this is a whole other topic for another day, but what you just said is true. And it may actually fix one of our greatest problems in our country, and that is our mental health in our country. The reason I believe we have a major mental health problem in our country is because of idleness. We have too many people who are not producing something at work or in their own life. They're not creating. And I'm a firm believer that we are sent here by God to create on this earth. And the creation process brings joy, real joy to people. And because we don't produce hardly anything, because we've outsourced that all over the world, we have far too many people who have mental health crises because we're idle. And it's a topic for another day, but firmly believe that it's part of this issue to me.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So there's something interesting, right? This isn't like, I go back to recent time and I go, this has happened recently, right? 2018, you remember Donald Trump? I remember this vividly. He got really fired up 2018 and he put a tariff on China. I just looked it up. I can remember this, so I couldn't remember when it happened. So I looked up the steel and aluminum tariff of 2018 were imposed by the Trump administration under Section 232 of Trade Expansion Act of 1962. That steel and aluminum tariff, when he did that, it was a 25% tariff on steel coming into our country and a 10% tariff on aluminum. Because at that time, we did not have hardly any steel manufacturing in our country left, which was causing us to have real supply chain issues in America. We imposed that tariff. Everybody said we are going to go broke. Like, the American people are not going to be able to handle the inflation that happens on every car, every tractor, every tanker, right? The opposite happened. We actually saw the biggest boom in American steel innovation, technological advancements, and production coming out of that. Yes, did we still have foreign steel coming in to make up the difference? We weren't, steel dependent. We had to still import it. But that Tariffs Act, they say that tariff alone, with that steel coming in from China, actually produced more money than the top 10% paid in taxes. We always hear this BS line about if the top 1%, da, 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 da. That tariff alone made up more money than what the top 10% paid in taxes. And our steel industry thrived, right? Like it flourished during
jobs came back and
jobs came. Like, it was a huge win, right? And I expect the same thing to happen, right? And so, that's where I go back to there's some things that are going to naturally happen. Government revenue is going to be boosted dramatically by these things. They're still going to sell steel into our country. They're still going to sell aluminum. They're still going to sell medical equipment that we aren't producing. We're going to have to buy some semiconductors until our market makes enough. But they're going to come in at a 25% tariff, which is bottom line revenue to the federal government that we don't have today, which with appropriate cuts and appropriate tax implications will reduce what the American public have to pay in taxes. So this, to me, it's just it's a great shift, right? Trump's gone out. You probably heard this recently. You've talked about it at the beginning and you made a statement, but Trump has been floating the idea that if tariffs are done like he expects them to be done over the next 4 years, that it could reduce or eliminate the IRS and federal income tax. Have you heard this, Zach?
Oh, yeah.
Do you believe it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could get to that point, right? One of the things that has to happen in conjunction with that, though, is you have to reduce spending. Your GDP has to be a certain percentage of your debt. And right now we are on a razor thin edge of that, right? And so with all of these tariffs coming in and with whether you like it or don't like it, as an entrepreneur, it is fun to watch the Doge team go to work.
Oh, man.
And discover all this stuff. But as you start to do all those things and you reduce the amount of money that the federal government needs to spend, that only unburdens taxpayers, right? Because it infuriates me, actually, every time I hear the word the government's money.
It is. They don't have any money.
The government does not make money, right? They print fiat currency and put it out into the market, but it is your tax dollars. So, like, every American should be infuriated if their tax dollars are not going to something that benefits the American people as a whole, because it is your money. So the government doesn't have any money. So when they talk about government spending, there is no government spending. There's government spending of your tax dollars. So as they reduce that and they kick these tariffs in, you could see one day where the income tax you don't need it, right? You may need some other form of small consumer tax, which, by the way, would be a much more fair tax. And the tariffs may cover the difference, right? I mean, you could possibly get there.
So I would say this, right? We probably need to explore a couple of things, right? You've talked about there's a real chance that in the short term, year to 18 months for sure, that we could see inflation on consumable goods, right? Things that we use and buy every day. That's the reality. You're not going to fix this without it. That being the case, you and I, of course, are massive proponents. This podcast is called the SoundMoney Podcast for a reason, right? We firmly believe that the very best thing that an individual can do in the world is not store their value in fiat currency, right? With or without inflation, storing your stored value, that being maybe your savings, in a fiat currency like the US dollar is really foolish, because since 1913 it has been done nothing but inflate away, right? It's just its spending power is being diminished every second. We could dramatically see that increase in the short term with tariffs, right? I firmly believe we need tariffs. We need them to balance the trade deficits, to increase revenue for the United States, to bring manufacturing home, to increase jobs, to help our nation be able to be innovative. All those things I believe, but I know this is going to cause some inflation. So for me, you got to store your excess in gold and silver, in sound money. It's just not even a question. The other thing that could happen here, Zach, is actually what we call a trade war, where we get into a spot where we impose a 25% tariff on automobiles, right? Or on heavy machinery. We do that, and then those countries turn right back around and they put a 50% tariff on our wheat or on our natural gas, right? If that happens, right, we get ourselves in this trade war that escalates to a spot where it does globally start to erode confidence in the US dollar or in the euro or in the Mexican peso or the Canadian dollar. It erodes confidence there. And I would say that currently the euro, the Canadian dollar in particular, are so fragile. They are fragile. The US dollar is a little fragile, but in comparison to those two currencies, we are tight. But they're so fragile that if you end up in a trade war, you could see, just like we saw in Venezuela, a collapse of a currency rather rapidly. I believe,
Yeah.
I personally believe we're seeing it in Canada. Like, they've made economic policies for the last 7 years that are horrific for their people and for their industries. And their response to these possible tariffs has been nothing but ridiculousness. And I believe they're on such a razor thin margin, right? We study that we know Canadian government, we know their financial situation with their fiat currency very well. We exchange it on a daily basis, so we really stay on top of it. I believe a trade war will have a major chance to collapse their dollar. So I'm telling people, you better protect all of your excess, any excess. You should be protecting in SoundMoney. Probably should be done in the SoundMoney wallet. If you don't know what that is, you ought to check that out. Like that is the safe haven, right? Thoughts on that, Zach?
It's a very real possibility. I mean, the thing that's going on in the world right now today that I think that this is a topic that I think you have to look at. You have to wear two different hats if you're going to talk about this. One is you have to put your social hat on or off and your economic hat on or off, because there's so many social issues with all of this. It's like, well, you don't care about these other countries. You don't care about humanity as a whole. You don't care about yada, yada. I mean, but that conversation is what has gotten these countries into such a big problem nowadays. And I feel bad for the countries that are going to take the brunt of this, but the president of the United States of America and Congress have a fiduciary responsibility to their voters and to their country, to put their country first, right? And so the problem is all of this the sky is falling stuff that's happened over the last 5-10 years with global warming. So many countries have spent so much money on all of these social programs and the taxes on climate change and all this. They have put themselves in situations where my opinion is there won't be a trade war. Like they can't afford it.
Too many of them are on the board to collapse.
Yes. I mean, if you saw what happened to the Mexican peso and the Canadian dollar last week, it's like
crazy.
It devalued that fast. Now go through, and the tariff never hit.
No, it never took place.
Right? Now go throw a tariff on top of that. Now all of a sudden you have a devalued, the ratio against the United States dollar and their currency is way less. It takes way more of their currency to buy our products now, and then go throw a tariff on top of that. I just don't think you're going to see a huge tariff war because no country can afford it. Everybody's in a position right now with their GDP and debt ratios that every single country is on the brink of collapse. And I don't say that as like a doomsdayer. It is just the financial reality of it. So I don't think there's going to be a trade war. I really think most of these countries are going to have to say, you know what? We'll play with you. However, they will threaten, right? You saw Canada threaten, you saw Mexico threaten, and within hours, it was like, oh, okay, we'll deploy 10,000 troops because we can't afford a trade war.
And we've actually watched something remarkable. You know, we've been on the phone a lot the last few days. I mean, this discussion, right, has made our phones blow up with people realizing that, hey, I just got off the phone with some people that live over in the European Union, in Poland, who they're terrified, right? The euro took a beating, just with this discussion, right? and they're terrified, right? That and they have tariffs, right? They live in a world that there's VAT tax of 18% every day, right? For products coming to their country. And they're super elated because there's these things, the SoundMoney wallet allows them to buy gold and silver stored in vaults without a tariff, without a VAT tax, have it stored, and then have instant liquidity when they need it, right? We just got off the phone with people that were up in Canada who said, do you know that I use the SoundMoney wallet every day to buy gold and silver, because I don't have to pay. There's certain, this is how ridiculous this is, right? We let every product from Canada into our country, Zach. We have a lot of Canadian listeners, so this is only speaking ill of the Canadian government because they're horses' asses, right? Like, this isn't about you, but your government's stupid, okay? They have a massive list of things that America cannot send into their country. Not just a tariff.
Dairy, meat. I mean,
one of which is a Silver Eagle. Can't send a monster box of Silver Eagles to Canada. They don't. Now, they didn't want to poke the bears. They don't say a Silver Eagle. They say, we don't accept 3.9 silver into our country. They do that because 3.9 silver is everything the U.S. Mint makes. Okay. But guess what they want to export every day to an American citizen? 4.9 silver in a
Maple Leafs, baby.
Okay. We have endless people every day who say, we love the SoundMoney wallet because the maple leaf has never increased in value like the silver dollar from America, the U.S. American Eagle. We want American Eagles. We don't care if we have them at our house. What we care is that we own them and then we can instantly liquidate them and that we can buy them fractionally. That is the great, so for me, I realize, you and I are in the business of global business. Hey, tariff all this crap. Fix the problems at home. Because we have a product and service that is anti-inflation every day, that builds value for people, and that you don't have to pay the tariffs on because guess what? It's stored in our vaults in America. It doesn't leave. It's produced here and it stays here. And if you want to take distribution of it, we'll send it to you. And guess what? Then you got to pay it on what you take home.
Yeah.
But not in the middle. And if you resell it, you don't ever have to pay it. So
yeah, and
really big deal.
And if you look at gold and silver just on its face value of what it is as a commodity, if you were going to look at any type of inflationary period and you were going to say, okay, long term, where am I going to put my money for long term quote unquote investment, right? It's not investment advice.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at where you're going to store value, let's just talk about stored value. Are you going to store it in real estate? Are you going to store it in wheat? Are you going to store it in land? Are you going to store it in the stock market? Are you going to store it in cryptocurrencies? If you just look at it on its face value as a commodity to store value, it is the single most powerful asset to do that in.
Yes.
It is international. It does not matter where you go, right? The price is the price.
Worldwide.
You can use it everywhere you go. Every single person will accept it. You can take it with you. You can't take land. You can't take real estate. You can't if you look at it on its face value, and then if you look long term at what gold and silver has really done as a commodity, because you can't make more of it. If you look at inflation and the price of goods and services, how it's increased over the last 10 years, have wages done the same? No. There is a great disparity between produced goods and wages, right? Well, when most people look at their investment portfolios and they go, oh, well, over the last 6-7 years, I've been invested in the S&P 500 fund. I made a 10% return on my money. Do the math. How much has inflation been over the last 10 years?
Yeah.
If you made a 10% return on your money in the S&P 500 fund, and inflation has been way over 10%.
10%.
how much money did you really make? Because it's not about how much money you have.
No.
Because money is also a store of value, right? Fiat currency. But it is the worst store of value on planet Earth because it is so highly manipulated. So if you look at the store of value, you go, okay, that investment, I actually lost money because it's the purchasing power that matters. Had you put the same amount of money in gold and silver, and you do the math relative to the purchasing power, you have a higher store of value, right? You can purchase more goods and services today with silver or gold that you bought 10 years ago than you can with $1 that you invested and actually got a 10% return on. So it is a store of value. It is purchasing power that matters, not how much money is sitting in your bank account. You can have, if bread today is $5 a loaf and you put $5 in your bank account, 2 years from now, if bread is $10, you don't care about the $5 anymore, right? You care about what you can buy with the $5. So that's the real mechanism for store of value that you have to look at in an inflationary period. What is the commodity that is going to give me the purchasing power when I'm ready to spend it?
Exactly. And you know, people need to be aware of that, right? Because we are probably going to see some increased inflation in 2025 because of this these tariffs. But at the end of the day, I wholeheartedly know that the tariffs will be of great benefit to the U.S. economy, its workforce, and its people moving forward. But in the short term, there will be a price to pay. And we just want our listeners to protect themselves, right? We want them to protect themselves and know how to use what's available to them. And if you're a listener, you have no idea what we're talking about, you need to go check out sound.money, right? That's where you can go jump on there and take a look. If you're a listener of ours, you probably have a sound.money account. And I'd say, hey, use it, right? Like you use it to protect yourself.
If you have cash sitting in the bank account right now that you do not need, you
Don't
really
leave it
need
there.
to think about what's happening to that cash sitting in the bank account.
Yeah. Be really careful, right? It's losing for you. And if you don't have cash in the bank and you're not storing it and you just can't seem to get ahead, start putting something away, right? That's why we have that, sound.money. It allows you to buy $5 at a time of gold, $1, $100, right? What you have, and just start the process. Zach, in conclusion, right? We're entering into a unique period, right, of time in business in America. That there's so much happening every day. You and I just came from a lunch appointment. I mean, I have never seen so much optimism in the marketplace. Never. I've never seen so many opportunities. It's the 1st of February, right? I have looked at more amazing business deals in the last 4 weeks than I have in 5 years. I just can't believe the things that people are bringing us to see today. And so many of them are amazing. So I hope you're taking advantage of it. I hope you're out there going, hey, how am I gonna take advantage of this opportunity right now that's before me, where there's new business opportunities because of tariffs. There's new things that are happening in my community that are available. Where can I make a little extra income, a little extra money? What can I do? I mean, I don't have enough hours in the day, and you don't either, because there's so much opportunity today. So we'll let you have the last word, Zach.
Yeah, I agree with you, Josh. I think right now, like, there's going to be some boogeymans that are going to come out every once in a while in this administration as we go forward for the next quarter or so. That's got to happen to get some of this stuff fixed, right? But overall, we have never lived in a period of time where there is more opportunity to make money and innovate and produce and add value to society than we are living in today. And I really hope that people have opened up their eyes to that. I mean, like I say, like we just talked about, these tariffs can bring lots of new opportunities to America, and everyone should be paying attention to that. And I just hope people stay optimistic, even through some of these bumps and roadblocks that we go through. Stay optimistic. Do whatever you need to do to keep your household safe and to keep your business safe. But man, I think right now is the time to go all in. Personally, I don't think in my lifetime there's ever going to be another opportunity like today to really do something significant and build something big with what's coming. Like, it's amazing.
I don't either. I think this is the time to do it. And I think our listeners are going to take full advantage of it. I would encourage you listeners, right? We have a growing audience. Do us a favor, right? Like wherever you're listening to the podcast, we're all over the place. Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, you name it, right? We're all over. YouTube. Do us a favor and like what we're sharing. Like it, subscribe to it. Do us a favor and drop a comment this week about how gold and silver has helped you. Right? We'd love to know. We'd love to share some of your stories. So drop a comment and let us know how gold and silver have helped you in an inflationary market, because it will help someone else. And we'd love to share some of your stories and some of your experiences. And Zach, we know next week we got a really special podcast coming up. A lot of our members have been asking some serious questions about how do I take advantage? How can I use a home-based business to help me with my personal taxes? And we have a special guest next week to help on that subject, someone that we trust and we know has helped us and guided us through some of those things in life. And so that'll be next week's episode. So we appreciate everybody being with us today on the Sound Money, Sound Principles podcast. Until next time, I'm Josh Anderson alongside Zach Davis. You guys have a great rest of your week. Thanks.
All right, we'll see you guys.